calculating the mean from a frequency distribution. Calculating the mean from a frequency distribution is the same calculation for the mean that was presented at the beginning of this section, but it incorporates this approach. When working with data summarized in a frequency distribution, we make calculations possible by pretending that all sample values in each class are equal to the class midpoint. This new formula is not really a new concept, it is simply a variation of the mean. So here's the formula, the mean from a frequency distribution. We first multiply each frequency and class midpoint, and then we add the products, which is what you see in the numerator. So the sample mean is going to be the sum of, you're going to take the class midpoint, each frequency is multiplied by the class midpoint, and you're going to add them together. And then you're going to divide it by the sum of the frequencies, which is equal to n. So let's take a look at an example here. In example 7, we're going to compute the mean from a frequency distribution. The first two columns of the table here are the same as the frequency distribution of table 2.2 or 2.2 from chapter 2. Okay, so here is our frequency distribution. Okay, now remember, this is the time in seconds, where this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 classes. And then we have our frequency. And so we're going to use the frequency distribution in the first two columns to find the mean. So we have 6, 18, 14, 5, 5, 1, and 1. Now we also need to find the totals. So the total frequency is adding these all up. So let's just go ahead and do it on our calculator just to verify that we get 50. So we're going to add 6 plus 18 plus 14 plus 5 plus 5 plus 1 plus 1, and that equals 50. Okay, so now what we're going to do is the following. We're going to have to find the class midpoint, okay, and then that represents x. And the value of f is from this column. And then in this column, we're going to take the frequency of f and then multiply it by the class midpoint. So let's take a look at the first row. Well, in order to find the class midpoint, we need to take the lower limit and the upper limit of the class, add them together, and divide by 2. So 0 plus 14 is 14 divided by 2 gives us a midpoint of 7.0. Now, in this column over here, we need to take the frequency, which is 6, and then we're going to multiply it by the class midpoint of 7.0. And then that gives us a total of 42.0. Okay, next, we're going to look at the next class. We're going to take 15, add 29, and then divide that by 2. So 15 plus 29 divided by 2 gives us 22.0. Okay, oops, not that one. So we know that that gives us 22.0. And then we're going to take the frequency of the class, which is 18, and then we're going to multiply it by the class midpoint to give us 396.0. Okay, next, we want to find the next class midpoint. So we're going to take 30 plus 44 divided by 2, which gives us 37.0. And so then we're going to take the class frequency of 14 and then multiply it by the midpoint, 37.0, to give us 518.0. Okay, next, we're going to find the next midpoint. 45 plus 59 divided by 2 gives us 52. And then we're going to take the class frequency, which is 5 for that class, and then we're multiplying it by the midpoint to give us 260.0. Okay, next, we have the next midpoint, which is 60 plus 74 divided by 2, which gives us 67.0. We're going to take that frequency of 5 and multiply it by that midpoint to get 335.0. Okay, next we want to find the next midpoint. 75 plus 89 divided by 2 gives us 82.0. We're going to take that frequency of 1 and then multiply it by the midpoint to give us 82.0. Okay, next we're going to take the class midpoint of the last class. To find the class midpoint is 90 plus 104 divided by 2 gives us 97.0. We're going to take the frequency of that class, which is 1. We're going to multiply it by the midpoint of that class, which is 97.0, and then that's going to equal 97.0. Okay, now the next thing that we want to do is the following. Okay, what we want to do is now we want to total up this entire column. So what we want to do is find the total by adding all of these up, because remember, the sigma notation tells us that we need to add those all up. So here we want to find the sum by adding each one. So sigma of the midpoint times the frequency, you're going to add those all up. So when you add them all up, that gives you a total of 1730.0. And then recall that the total frequency over here is 50. So now what are we going to do? Well, when working with data summarized in frequency distributions, we make calculations possible by pretending that all sample values in each class are equal to the class midpoint. So now let's take a look at the formula. So to find the mean of the distribution, right? Okay, and just so you know, okay, we need to make sure that we have it set up correctly in a sense of our formula. So this should be in parentheses because you're finding the sum of those being multiplied together. So we know that the sum of the midpoint times the frequency is 1730. And we know the sum of the frequencies is 50. So then, therefore, when we divide those, we get 34.6 minutes. Now remember, the data in our set is 618. We're going to go one more decimal place, which gives us 34.6. So therefore, we would say that the result of the sample mean equal to 34.6 minutes is an approximation because it is based on the use of class midpoint values instead of the original list of commute times.